Hello again, everyone. Welcome back. It's James, and today we're going to be covering a new topic and even using a different app in the grand library of Art of Stat Statistics apps. Today, we'll be using the Art of Stat Inference app to be looking into inference for a population mean. The very first thing you'll need is some summary statistics about your dataset or the dataset itself to start investigating. Also, if you'd like to follow along, you're going to need to go grab yourself the Art of Stat Inference app in the App Store. And when you look up Art of Stat Inference, it should be the first result, and if not, among the first three. So go ahead and download that here for yourself so you can kind of follow along with what goes on here. I, as you may know by now, am an avid gamer and found an interesting data set about one Fortnite player's experiences. Today we'll be making inference about the average placement of this player in the game Fortnite and quickly addressing some confidence intervals. Let's actually go look at the dataset and kind of explain what's going on in the dataset before we start picking it apart in the app. What we need to do is we need to go into my Google Drive, and from there we'll be able to go into the Sheets. We see I have Fortnite statistics here, and that goes over into the Sheets app, the Google Sheets app, and we can see every single one of his games here, their date, the time of day it was played, and his placement in each game, his eliminations, assists, revives, and things like that. All these things should be familiar if you're familiar with the game Fortnite, but if not, all you really need to know is that these are each individual game, independent from one another, that are played and recorded their outcomes of each game, what placement he got, sort of like a race. In fact, the only real thing you'll need to know about Fortnite is the variable placed or placement and how that works. That works exactly like a race in real life does. In each individual Fortnite game, there are 100 players at the start, and you want to be placement 1. The lower the placement, the better. And an important note is that each unique game will not impact any other games. It's a fresh slate each game. So as an example of that, you can see on 4/10 at 6 p.m. he started a game, and he, after a couple minutes, managed to get placed at about 27th place. The next game right after that, same day, probably still in the 6 p.m.s. Not exactly recorded what time his first game ended and things like that, but there's no way it was the exact same time. It was maybe a couple minutes later. He started a fresh slate of a game and got placed 45th instead, almost about double of what his first placement was. Then, same day, at 4:10, also at 6 p.m., probably actually, in reality, recorded around 6:45, got placed in 38th place. And then he starts to move on to 7 p.m.s, and we can scroll down and maybe choose one of them, like number 51 here. He was on 4/14. He started a game at 1 p.m. and was placed in the 32nd spot, pardon me. So that's kind of what's going on with each of these individual observations. So, to actually look into the variable placed or placement, which is what we're going to be investigating today, we're going to need to copy and paste each of the individual observations of the variable placement into our app. So let's highlight them all here. Oop, that's eliminations. Let's highlight them all here. Let's move up. Oh, it's a little tricky. And then we can click it to copy, and now we have all of the placed variables copied to our clipboard. So from that, we can move over into our Art of Stat Inference app, and then we're going to go to Inference for a Population Mean, and we can input our individual observations by pasting them in here. Our main inference and point of performing inference for a mean is that we want to use the data, so our every single observation of the variable placement, to construct a 95% confidence interval for the average placement of this player in his games of Fortnite. So let's move over into the confidence interval section and really dive more into all of the information on this page. From this tab, we can see the confidence interval reaches from about 19.2442 to 24.8477, which is also graphically represented in the app. What this confidence interval tells us is that with 95% confidence, we estimate the average placement in a game of Fortnite for this player is between 19th place and maybe 25th. Now that you know a little bit about what we mean and how we can interpret the confidence interval according to your data, I hope it's been really helpful for starting to use the Art of Stat Inference app and understanding some things behind inference for mean. In another video, I'll be diving into the hypothesis testing and the heaping load of information involved with that. I hope to see you soon.